question. My comments are to the builder. Great presentation, so thank you so much. So is there a potential possibility for a fence prior to the tree line? Because on the other side of our property is Shunpike Field, and believe me, trees do nothing to prevent people from coming over to our lake. And so there is a dilapidated fence now that was put up many years ago when it came to be built. But certainly we'd like to have potentially thoughts of putting something up to prevent people from coming into our neighborhood, and especially to our lake. So I'd like to have them look into that. And then the second comment on the trash compactor, I don't know if what you were saying about only your maintenance people being in charge of it, does that mean when it's actually compacting, like the noise of that? I don't know how loud that is. It sounds like it would be loud, and I've seen other trash compactor areas, and it is very close to the neighborhood. So I don't know if that could be potentially moved to a different place, like where the Charlie Brown's trash was, although we know that trash bins caused all the issues with all the trash that gets into our neighborhood all the time. That, and obviously the Juniper and the gas station, they all have horrible trash systems there. But I'm just wondering if they can potentially move that away from where our neighborhood is from a noise perspective, even if it doesn't smell or potentially the trash can't get out.
Okay, thank you, Francine. As to the current condition of the property, we don't own the property yet, but we do have, we can contact the owners and make sure that the property is kept clean and free of trash. And then Joe, I'm gonna let you answer the other questions with regards to the trash and the possibility. I did see in one of the pictures for the basketball court that there was a fence up. Is there a possibility of putting kind of an enclosed fence around so that it doesn't, kids aren't enticed to go over to Sunset Lake?
Yes. Madam Mayor, if I may interrupt, I think comments of this type should be noted by Mr. Del Duca and considered between now and the site plan application, and where he can give full consideration to the comment that is made. I think trying to redesign the concept plan while Mr. Del Duca is on his feet puts him at a little bit of a disadvantage. So my suggestion is Mr. Del Duca can note these comments and either address them or be prepared to address them at the planning board, where that is really, as you stated before, the substance of the planning of the site.
That's fair.
And that's fine. I will say a couple things. Number one, the expectation is that we would have a fence on the back property line for the reason it's not shown on the concept plan, but typically we would do it, and we would certainly do it here. And I'll just tell you that the trash compactors, the noise level of trash compactors is very low. There's decibel measurements and specs for that, and we'll get into those details when we get to the site plan. But they won't hear the trash compactor in the residential neighborhood.
Thank you. Did I think I captured, did I capture all the questions? Yeah. Greg, next up.
Next up is Tom Evans.
Hi, Tom Evans from Birch Hill Drive. I have a question regarding the Rolling Knolls landfill discussion. You talk about lots of ideas and you don't say what they are. And you talk about specifically alternate 6 option. Is that something you could tell us what that exactly is?
Sure. There is no alternate 6 in the feasibility study. There's alternates 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And alternate 3, I think, has three separate subparts, and alternate 4 has at least 2. We're calling it alternate 6 just for purposes of convenience. It's the one that Mr. Horn of the Refuge has been talking about for several years, but has never put in writing. The basic concept of it is that he wants all of the garbage that's on the and waste that's on the 35 acres owned by the refuge to be removed and put on the 130 acres that's owned by the Mealy Trust. He also wants a large excavation on the Mealy property with that soil, which he contends is reusable because it's clay material. Garbage and waste would be assembled into or collected into the excavation. And then to the extent that you didn't do that, you would use the material that was excavated, assuming it could be dewatered and that sort of thing, and use it and make a cap over what remains of all the garbage wherever it's located. It's not been designed. It's not part of the alternates A through or 1 through 5, although arguably some of the concepts are touched on in alternates 3 and 4. So we're calling it alternate 6 for convenience because it gives us a clearer identification than, part D of alternate 3 or part C of alternate 4, that sort of thing. So that's the basic concept. The advantage, of course, is that if you can use material from on site, you limit the number of trips of off-site material being brought in to build the cap. At this point, it's being priced out or evaluated by the PRPs at the request of the EPA, and the EPA is obviously going to be considering it.
Thank you, Carl. Bob, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, what we're referring to as alternate 6 from the Fish and Wildlife Service was just received this past Tuesday, which is May 11th.
Here comes alternate 6.
We are reviewing it, and the good news is that there's no you don't have to guess. Everything is now in one document, and that document is being evaluated by Mr. Woodward and some of our internal staff, and then we will ask some more questions, and eventually it will go to the EPA for the evaluation. But what we are referring to as option 6 is something that was just received on Tuesday, and it's positive that it's now all in writing, and we can make sure that all aspects of it are evaluated based on 2021 costs.
Thank you, Bob. Next, do we have?
Jen McNally?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, hi, Jennifer McNally on 19 Ferndale Road here in the township. And got 2 quick things. First off, to the builder, thank you so much for your presentation. I drive by the site every day. It looks like you guys did a really thoughtful, well thought out plan. And it seems as if you really got a lot of input from the township committee, from residents of other plan communities that you've done, and sort of taken a lot of input and a lot of thought and time into this. So it looks great. It looks something that I think people really like to drive by and see on a daily basis. I probably drive by there at least 20 times a day. So so it's important. So it looks great. And I think it's really thoughtful for the residents too, and for them to feel as part of the community and part of their own community there in that development. So I think it's great. Really all pieces really have been brought together there. So thank you. And my other thing is about with Rolling Knoll. Jessica Romeo spoke a few minutes ago about the amended letter to the EPA. And I also want to say I support this and would hope that we would be able to get something out there, because I think from the previous meeting a few weeks ago, Township Committee, it seemed as if time is of the essence, and that this activity is going to pick up steam, so that we can, if we can amend our statement and our stand on this, I think that'd be really helpful. So that's it. So thank you all. Thank you for your hard work. I know Carl Woodward, thank you for this. It's a lot of work, these CAGs and everything else. So I really appreciate your time and effort that everyone spent on this. It's really very important. It's probably one of those significant projects we'll see here in the township for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have anyone next?
We have several. Dot Stillinger.
Go ahead, Dot.
Yes, hi. I'm Dot Stillinger, Noe Avenue, and I'd like to just make my usual comment about rolling knolls. Right now, the only right now the way things are set up, there are only 5 alternatives being considered, and the only paperwork that we have seen so far is a letter from December 19th stating that the township advocates an alternative that leaves a lot of waste on the property and that does not allow trails. Now, that's what's been written down. That's what's being considered. That's what's on the table right now. So I would strongly urge the committee to send something in writing to the EPA that says that the set in stone choice of alternate 3 just doesn't hold anymore, that other things are being considered. Let me point out that alternatives, the alternatives on the table now, so-called alternatives 1 to 4, are cheaper than remediating the whole place, but it would mean that we could never have access to that open space. There would be no possibility of putting in trails. We'd have unusable open space. And in a town that values its recreational opportunities, the possibility of having more trails, places for people to walk and bird watch, you know, there's even a pond there that could be used for kids for fishing. The possibility of not happening is dreadful. So I really urge this committee to, everybody on the committee is going to be off the committee at some point, and you're going to want to look back at what you accomplished while you were on the committee, and you need to ask yourselves, do I want to walk away leaving 140 acres in Chatham Township open space that will never be able to be used for any kind of recreation for the residents of Chatham Township? And right now, the things that are written down that can be done by the EPA right now are alternatives that would prevent passive recreation. Now, just one other technical point. The EPA is required to consider possible future uses of the property when they make a final determination. And right now, a perfectly plausible future use of that property is trails. The Mealy Trust is probably not going to own that property forever, and 2 plausible things that could happen would be for it to be purchased by Chatham Township, or donated to Chatham Township, or purchased or donated to the Great Swamp Refuge. Because no development is ever going to be permitted, there aren't a whole lot of other choices as to what can be done. I just can't believe that the Mealy Trust is going to continue to own that property forever, pay taxes on property that can't be used. It seems to me that a possible future use is for it to become Chatham Township open space or to become part of the refuge. And in that case, that can't happen unless an alternative is chosen that allows for trails. So I hope that you will consider having that be something that you really value being able to say you accomplished. Thanks, folks, for listening to me one more time.
Thank you, Dot. For everyone who's addressing this, and if it didn't come through in the initial conversation about rolling knolls, one of the reasons why we're moving this forward with our partners or partnering with the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Refuge is because we heard loud and clear that, well, we heard it in 2018, but we're hearing it again now, that they may be moving towards a decision. And for those of you who have spoken tonight have all participated in the CAG meetings, and we've been hearing about this additional remedy, which is we're calling remedy number 6. We've made the step of getting the Refuge to put that remedy in writing to help define it. We have been clear with the EPA that we're looking at a changed use of the status of the refuge for 365 days of use, unlimited use, not trespasser use. It's currently, the current standard is approximately 84 days of use. So us and the Great Swamp and the Refuge, we're all on the same page. As Carl has indicated in his conversations with the attorneys and with the attorneys for the EPA, in reaching out to the DOI and reaching out to the attorneys for the Mealies, we're moving in that direction. Because again, we all have the same goal of having this as open, passive space, or passively used space that residents can enjoy. But it's not that easy. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces to this. So we have to be sure that this is something that at the level of the cleanup that's going to happen, that we're requesting from the EPA, that gets costed out. As I think I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, the option number 5, which is a full cap for the site, is currently at about $62 million. And interestingly, at the last CAG meeting, they said, gee, that's plus or minus 50%, which I couldn't believe. And then they said, well, and it never comes in below cost. So we need to, understand what option number 6, which is encapsulating in the site using on-site source materials, is going to do. Hopefully, it may even bear out to be at the same cost or less expensive than a full site cap, which would have truck traffic that would not be advantageous to the Green Village area. So we are moving in that direction. We're moving our partners in that direction, but we still need to gather some more information. And I believe the meeting, if we're able to get that together with the Mealies, that we'll be able to get there. That's our goal. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, we have several. Next up is phone number ending in 7778.
Oh, you have the floor, 7778.
Hi, this is Stuart Carr from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township. Good evening, everybody. A couple of comments. First of all, for Attorney Woodward, I'm not sure if you were referring to it or not, but this Mike Horn about not having things in writing, there was at least one document that I saw called FWS Comments on Rolling Nose Landfill dated April 13 of 2021. And that speaks to the hybrid alternative 5 with respect to the landfill, and I think some of the digging a deep hole, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure if your comments about nothing in writing is exclusive of that, but if you haven't seen that document, that's something I think that at least sheds a little bit of light on your comment as to what they're doing. Nothing substantive in there in terms of meets and bounds and quantitative analysis, et cetera, but at least laying out the idea of the passive recreation and capping the site with some variations on the alternative 5. That's item number 1. Item number 2 is, like I said 3 weeks ago at the last meeting, I was a little bit disappointed, or continue to be, that there didn't appear to be too much discussion on this discussion item. Mayor Ness has made some comments, but I didn't really hear too much back and forth after Attorney Woodward concluded his remarks there earlier this evening prior to the 522 Southern Boulevard presentation. So maybe we're getting up to speed, but it sounds like we're, pretty far along here, and maybe some public discussion by the members, would be helpful. Number three, and this is the third time I've asked the question, I'll try it again here, for Mr. Hoffman. When was the public discussion in calendar 2019 or whenever that led to the letter, which I think was dated the December 11th of 2019 under Mr. Hoffman's signature, that went to US EPA that advocated for alternative 3? I didn't see anything anywhere in notes. Maybe it's there, but I'd like for Mr. Hoffman to answer that question at this point. What was the date of the public discussion of that letter before it went out? And I assume that the public was aware of it, but I didn't see it. And I'd just like to get some clarification there. And then with respect to that, does the committee intend to send a letter that says we're rescinding the letter of the 19th of December 2019, or not rescinding it, but we want to amend that letter to include the optionality to discuss more alternatives? Because as we all know, apparently the town is very, very integral to the decision-making process. And right now, notwithstanding Mayor Ness's comments, all they have in writing right now is we like alternative 3. And by the way, we have the final feasibility study determination activities coming up here in the next few weeks. So presumably Chatham Township as a town would need to act pretty quickly with that letter. So I'm asking here, what is the timeline for sending an amended letter? First of all, do you intend to? And number two, what is the timeline for sending an amended letter to say, in addition to alternative 3, we'd like to consider or have other alternatives considered? So that's where I am tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And if Mayor Ness and Mr. Hoffman could address that, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, did you want to just speak to some of the things that we've...
Well, let me just talk about timing first.
Yeah, some of the timing.
You were on the CAG call a couple weeks ago, and we've had subsequent discussions with EPA about this. They acknowledged that they're not going to, at the earliest, make a decision on the feasibility study until at least September. And they're not planning on holding any public hearings before then. So this is what's been portrayed right now as something imminent within the next month or two is really not going to happen. And the reason for that is, among other things, is the Fish and Wildlife Service has advised the EPA that they are doing some additional field studies that are going on right now or started this month. Well, when you do sampling and that sort of thing, it takes a while to take the samples, and then you have to have the testing, and then you have to get a report. And that's going to take, I think, more than 2 months, probably 3 months. And once that's submitted to the EPA is going to have to look at it. The other thing right now is we're having conversations actively with people about what to do. As was described, we, and Mr. Hoffman mentioned, and I think the mayor mentioned, we have a proposal that was received just 2 days ago, or a few days ago, by from the refuge, Mr. Horn, to Mr. Hoffman at our request, at his request. You know, it's like, you want us to advocate for this alternative? Well, you've never put it in writing in any substance. And if the most recent one, I haven't seen, Mr. Carr, the one that was in, you said this year. My history goes way back on this, and I've never seen anything in writing about it until just now. And Mr. Hoffman said to Mr. Horn, you'd better put it down in writing for us to review, and we'll send it to the EPA if it, you know, and that's what the intention is. Meanwhile, we're engaging everyone in discussions. So we're trying to be the motive force behind getting the parties talking to each other. And because there hasn't been a lot of conversation that's been productive, so I understand, up until this point. So there are a lot of moving parts. These cases are very complex, and they're very delicate because it involves not just 1, 2, or 3 parties. We've got, in the end, we're probably going to have 20 or 30. And when I say parties, I'm talking about the people that are going to end up having to pay for this, which is also a factor. So that's what I have to say at this point. And I don't know, Bob, will you have anything you want to add?
Sure, Madam Mayor. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, good. Mr. Carr, one thing, there was an email you sent today. You can see the April 22nd meeting